if I was just building a regular top rope anchor, right? I have my 3 pieces that I'm liking. I would build my anchor the exact same way as all of you did. Pick one. Normally I do the natural first, just because it makes it a little easier. I think we've all probably experienced that real quick. I come up, I'm gonna tie it off to it. I'm just gonna do a bowline, just what I'm comfortable with.
Anyone else think sounds
Got it. So I do my first one, I come back out. Again, that's the cliff, right? So I'm not trying to be all up in that cliff's area. So just back, I measure it out, kind of go to the edge, then I give it just a little bit more, right? It doesn't need a lot. Then I come back to my second piece, I do a clove hitch, right? Just for a little bit of adjustability to tighten up that loop if I need to. I know that your group did it on the tree, super nice. Again, you can just dump it right into that other bridge. Does everybody know and remember what a bridge is? I know that you took it with somebody else.
Yeah, I don't remember what a bridge
All right.
is.
So a bridge is a section of the anchor that can be cut out. So it's not taking any load,
Third.
right? So right now I have my 2 pieces making a loop. If I cut either one of those, it's going to my anchor. But now I'm gonna flake all this into the bridge, and this is just out of the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like the third leg, the redundancy part of it.
So it's that's still part of the anchor.
Okay.
It's gonna be anything outside of the anchor completely.
It's like the slack you're not using.
The slack.
Oh, yeah,
It's
okay.
all the excess. Especially, and it's predominantly used because it bridges 2 pieces. So what you'll see is my bridge is going to be from my second piece to my third piece.
Okay.
Right? I could just remove that rope. I could cut it out, build another anchor. And this
Oh, I
anchor would
got
not
it.
be affected at all. Does that make sense now?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool. I know that's kind of like a St. Paul, how like it's not like a term worldwide, but it's something that we use. It'll be kind of clean. But again, I don't want to go to the edge, so I take my tail, I plop it down kind of right by the edge, and again, I have to make that same kind of loop, but I have to go down and back up. So I'm not just going to do one handful. I need it just a little bit more so it can come back up. Come to my third piece, tie it off, right? This is pretty controversial, especially since all of you took your anchor lessons just last year. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not you can clove hitch on the ends of anchors. I'm just always going to do knots just to close off that system, but a lot of people say that if you have quite a bit of tail, that you're fine. You know, use your best judgment. Again, I grab all 3 lines, pull them right, making sure that rope is running where it wants to. I'm pulling in the direction of the pull, making sure it's slightly equalized, and then I'm going to take a step back, right? So I'm not by the edge. Then we're all agreeing that this right hand is equalized, right? So if my right hand is equalized, I grab between these 2 hands are equalized. So if my right hand's equalized, my left hand's equalized, right? And I'm just going to keep doing that. When I'm doing this, I'm making sure I'm not bending it this way, right? Because now they're all different, right? I'm making sure I'm not going across my body, going nice and out. Get to the end, fold it back over, and I'm going to tie my knot. Does everybody know what kind of knots we can tie?
Overhand.
Overhand on the bite, figure 8 on the bite.
Figure 8, figure 9, more twists, right? What's the advantages or disadvantages of that?
The overhand's going to get like super tight probably and be really hard to untie, but like a figure 8's going to be easier to untie probably.
Yeah, so the more twists we have, the more reps we have around, easier it is to untie, okay? It also uses more rope. So if you're ever trying to get here and you're like, oh my gosh, it's just like 3 inches too low, put another wrap in it, it's gonna bring it up. If you have like 6 wraps in it and you're like, man, I want to bring it down a little bit, do like one less one and it'll be brought down. But if you know you're gonna be on it for like a super long time, or like my brother is quite a bit larger than me. When I put him on an anchor, that knot gets really, really tight just because of physics and stuff. And so I always make sure that I do an extra like wrap or two around. So this is called a figure 9. It has an extra little bit. Okay. I grab my extra. I'm just gonna put it up to the top. Right. And toss it. It's right off the edge. Right. Any questions about this? This is all what essentially we all just did, right? I'm just gonna clean up my anchor a little bit so it's a little bit nicer. Nobody walks up to me and tries to mansplain anchors to me. You'd be surprised how often that happens. Especially when I first moved here 5 years ago and I was a bright-eyed little kid. Everybody wanted to give me advice. I do this for a living. Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's funny, I'd have my guiding shirt on, and they'd be like, oh, I've never seen those before. I'm like, oh, this is a cam. They're like, we didn't have those back in my day. Here, let me explain to you how to use these 30 pieces of webbing that I have glued gum in between them to hold me up. All right, I think we're all feeling comfortable with this, right? Being away from the edge. So what's the biggest thing that we have to do now when we're belaying? Has anybody ever top managed? No? Okay. So what I see a lot of people do is this. They build their anchor, they build it the exact same as like a bottom managed site. So like chucking their rope down, right? They get on their harness. Picked the wrong day to wear running shorts. Every single time I think, oh, it'll be fine. Alright. They get in, they grab their PAS. And the belay tool. Out. Load up. And then they're here. Okay? They clip into one of the legs, right? And then they walk to the edge. If I were to slip or fall, what's gonna happen?
You're gonna load a static device.
I'm going, so one, I'm gonna take a ride of a lifetime, and it is going to be awful. Okay, so this is what a lot of people do, and then they come to the edge, they sit down, and then they belay. Right? Where is my rope and everything?
Below you.
Way below me, right? So now I'm belaying on an edge, right? Trying to hunch over. My back is gonna be dead by 30 minutes into it. My neck is gonna hurt. All that, I'm gonna be bending over. If I have to do any of the skills that we're gonna be going over today, it's not gonna be great. Also, how's my protection?
Not great.
Right? If I fall, I'm falling however far this is, right?
Yeah.
And however far that is. I'm falling 5-ish feet maybe, right? Onto a static thing, it's not gonna be fun. Trying to get back up over isn't gonna be good. This is what I see a ton at the North Shore. This isn't apt for any real rescues, and it's not gonna have good belayer position to where you also are able to climb that day and not just have massive back pain, especially if you're like me and either one, you want to keep your back and nice healthy for the rest of your life, or two, you don't want to damage it more. We're gonna teach you some stuff, okay? Yeah.
Could you use the bridge to create your own point then?
So that's a good question. So yeah, one option would be just to extend this out, but it's really hard to get that to be the perfect length, because sometimes if I take this bridge, right, I try to come down, right? I do have this U, but now it's super far. I could probably tie something, but then it's just gonna be a kind of a cluster of ropes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
So instead of that, we're gonna do something slightly different, and it's gonna be how we start our anchor. Okay. So I'm just gonna do this. It's a nice day out. I'll say it.
So just for my brain, since I'm like trying to make sure I understand more than just like follow a recipe.
Yeah.
If you took that bridge and you brought it down and like did like, I don't know, like a double butterfly,
Yeah.
and it had 2 loops on the bite there.
Yep.
And you hooked into that at the right length, that'd be okay then.
That would be okay.
Because it'd be redundant for you.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
But like you saw just with
Yeah, it looks messy
like,
though, yeah.
It's messy, but it's also how far back is my protection here? It's not like super far back, right?
Sure.
But if you noticed, I was kind of that loop, right? It takes a lot of rope,
Yeah.
right? And I'm all about efficiency with my rope. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the end. Okay? Our first step with this is we're going to tie a stopper or knot. Okay, a catastrophe knot. A barrel works the best. Okay? It moves the least. We want at least 2 reps. Everybody feel comfortable with this? Yeah? Cool. Alright, we're gonna do that because now this can no longer go through our belay device. Okay, because we're gonna be using our belay device later. I'm going to measure it slightly past the edge. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building my anchor like normal. Okay? But I'm going to build essentially 2 anchors on top of each other. Okay? I'm going to have my anchor, my instructor tether, that's what this is. Then I'm going to have my anchor for the rest of the climb. Okay? So I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to add just 1. Let's do this. It's so very similar to, I think, how you did the tree. Is I'm going to come back up. I'm going to do an overhand. I'm going to do another overhand. Flip those around each other. Let's do it this way. Right, then I'm just going to also close hitch it. Every morning, takes me once. Oh no. Anybody who tells you that they can do everything perfectly, a liar. Alright, so right now, are we all kind of comfortable with this?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright, I still have my instructor line out, but my instructor line is really only going to 1, right? And it's going around a tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my anchor, but I'm just going to use 2 pieces. So right now I have a tree and I have this. Okay, so I'm going to come back up and tie an overhand. Shoop. Right?
This one part here is next one.
Yep. I'm going to come out, right? Equalize in my direction of pull where I want it to be. Come up. I'm going to tie an overhand, figure 8, whatever I want. Okay? Essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing exactly the same thing back there. I'm going to add a single lock and carabiner. Right, so I'm here, auto lock and carabiner. Now I'm going to clove hitch both of those. Does that make sense? So I'm going to take this one, exactly the same, grab, clove hitch, right? So now, this is 1 leg of my anchor, right? That goes to 2, so that's all redundant. Then I can grab my instructor line, and to make it redundant, all I have to do, again, a clove hitch, throw it on this. Does that make sense? So now I have 2 clove hitches on this, but now this is a fully redundant inker that I can clip into, and I can just throw my gree on, right? And I can hang here and be fine. I can lower myself down to the edge, and now instead of having just a PAS on, and if I slip or fall, it's going to be falling all the way to my endpoint, I have all this. It's infinite all the way to that end, right? I can lower just a little bit more. I can take a step back and pull it in. If I'm ever gonna do work or gonna be sitting there for a while, all I'm gonna do is add a catastrophe knot toward now, especially with these thinner ropes, if I just like slowly load it, a little bit of rope is gonna come out, especially if you have a brand new rope. It's gonna kind of, I remember when I first bought my rope, I went out and did a lot of this work, and like the first time I did it, I just kind of like sat back and I like lowered like a foot before it caught me. But as long as you have your hand on it, you like slowly go into it, it's fine. Then once it kind of gets better, it locks pretty quickly. Any questions about this so far? No? Cool. So now what I can do is essentially do exactly the same thing that I did there between those 2 pieces, between that piece that goes to those 2 and this 0.5, right? So I grab my rope, I come out, I go just the edge, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna come down just a little bit, not a ton. And we're gonna go over Y in a little bit. I'm gonna come back up, tie again, just overhand, clip it. Notice how I don't have a bridge between my second and my third piece. It's gonna be the major difference, but I do have bridges throughout all of that, right? So where I can bring all that in. It's just this U is gonna be different. Good, now instead of grabbing 3 pieces, I'm grabbing 2, right? But essentially what I'm doing is I have 2 pieces on that side and I have 1 piece here. So it's still redundant even if I lose one of them, right? I could lose this whole line and I still have redundancy because this one, I could lose this line and I'd have redundancy over there. And I have 2 pieces up there. Sound good? Good, and I'm gonna pull it equalized. Slide it down. But now if I just tie an overhand, would my master point be redundant?
No.
What do I have to do?
Fold it over.
Fold it over. Fold it over, so now I have 2, right? And essentially I have 4 ropes, 2 loops. Now I do my overhand, figure 8, something. What this causes is something called the hood, okay? This needs to be trapped by something. You can clip it back to the exact same point. You can fold it over. If it's super long, you can also just tie it off. Normally you don't want it super long though. So normally folding it over is plenty. Okay? Go off and notice how close it is to the edge. This is gonna be really important. Okay? So now that's my anchor. Pretty, not overly complicated, right? It's essentially building a 2-piece anchor and then building a 2-piece anchor off of that 2-piece anchor, right? But now I have my instructor line that's only ever gonna have my body weight on it. I'm never really gonna be taking falls. On, I clip in, and now what I can do is I can get all the way to the edge or past it. I can get to the very edge and I can go, okay, I'm here, I'm going to walk down and get to a good position, and now I can, at this point, tie off and either belay from here, where I'm gonna be way more comfortable because now it's up above me, right? I'm belaying in this position instead of this position. Or what I can do is now I can take my PAS, right? Clip it to my master point, something. And now I can undo my tether, right? And now I'm below the edge, right? I'm statically loading this anchor, right? Instead of trying to sit on the edge and be exposing myself to that danger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions about any of that? It's definitely, yeah.
You want that master point just like barely over the edge then?
Yeah, because the lower it is, because the next person who comes over is, I would recommend to do one of two things. Either one, to also have a belay tool and lower themselves while still tied in, and you belaying them in, because they're going to have to get below this master point. This is when a lot of times when people are like, oh, I want my, like, your master point should be just over the edge. On a top man, like, if we were setting up any of these, right, in my opinion, doesn't make a big difference, you know? Cool, you're missing out on 4 feet of climbing. Is that last 4 feet of climbing really the only bit of climbing that we want to do? No, right? I'd rather be able to set up 2 anchors in the time it takes me, and then losing out on 4 feet on each, but then being able to do 50 more feet of climbing because we got a whole other route in, right? This, though, is going to make it to where how low you have to go over the edge. And personally, I like to be able to still see over the edge. So especially if I'm with a group, I can communicate and I'm not like alone down there. Because again, I'm a pretty big talker. I think we all know that. Sound good? Any other questions? That was a good one. Yeah.
So in the system, where's your belay device connected?
Would be right here.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So right now we're just learning how to like build an instructor line and go over. And then we're gonna actually build actual anchors like that once we do a mock one. And then we're gonna start going over how to belay from the top and lower from the top.
You wouldn't do it from that one, right?
What?
You wouldn't hook up your guide from that.
No. My belay device and everything would be to here.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Any other questions? Alright, let's bust into groups again.